Alright, so now let's revolve our discussion to the kinin cascade, right? This is one of the biochemical pathway that produces bradykinin, and this is to be considered as one of the bradykinin is one of the very strongest potent vasoactive peptide, one of the potent vasoactive peptide, right? And the bradykinin plays a major role in the inflammation, the pain, and the vascular permeability has been given out over here too. So we do have the several key components of the kinin cascade, right? One of the key component of this kinin cascade is kininogen. Kininogen. This kininogen is to be considered as the high molecular weight. High molecular weight, right? HMWK, high molecular weight kininogen, right? This is one of the factor, and this is actually to be considered as one of the substrate that gets cleaved to release the bradykinin, right? Okay, another component of this kinin cascade is the kallikrein. This is known as kallikrein. What does this kallikrein means out? This is one of the enzyme that cleaves down kininogen, right? And once this helps out to cleaves to this kininogen, what's being produced? Bradykinin is produced. Okay, bradykinin is produced. And then another component of this pathway, the kinin cascade pathway, we do have bradykinin itself. I've told you about that. This is the active product which causes the vasodilation, also increase the permeability, and also play the role into the increased sensation of the pains, right? And there is another component of this kinin pathway that we need to touch on today. That is C1. That is C1 esterase. C1 esterase inhibitor, which is you are looking out over here. Okay, these are the four components. And what is the C1 esterase inhibitor? This is the regulator that inhibits the kallikrein, right? And also the other components to prevent the excessive formation or the production of the bradykinin, right? So we do have the four components of the kinin cascade. The number one, that's the kininogen, right? Another one, we do guard the kallikrein, and then we do guard the bradykinin itself, and also the C1 esterase inhibitor. Now you have to understand about that. You see, in this pathway, the kallikrein, it helps to produce the bradykinin, right? From where? From the high molecular weight kininogen, right? The high molecular weight kininogen. Okay, and this is going to be a step-by-step pathway for us to understand that the kallikrein, which is this is an enzyme, right? Once this enzyme is being activated, the activated kallikrein acts on the high molecular weight kininogen, right? And this high molecular weight kininogen is cleaved down and starts releasing the bradykinin, right? And once the bradykinin is being released out, right, it starts binding to its receptors. Okay, the bradykinin starts releasing to the factors, that is the B1 factor and the B2 receptor, right? And where does all these receptors are being present? Onto the blood vessels, right? And what happens out there is the vasodilation, right? It means that there will be the increased blood flow, right? And the redness and warmth could be seen very clearly. After that, we do also have the increased vascular permeability, right? It means that the fluid starts leaking out of the blood vessels and causing the edema, okay? Causing the edema. And the pain, right? The bradykinin also stimulates the pain receptors, or you can just say that also stimulates the pain nerve endings, right? The pain nerve endings, right? So I've just very briefly told you about these three major actions of the bradykinin, but we have to get through the mechanism of action of all this one, right? That exactly how the bradykinin produce its three main effects. The first, the vasodilation, increased vascular permeability, and the pain, right? So we will go through all this step by step, and I will explain every single term as we encounter, so you don't need to memorize anything, but you will understand the logic behind it. The step one that you have to cover it up, that is the bradykinin. After the bradykinin is being produced, right? So the bradykinin starts getting attached to its receptors. That is the B1 receptor and the B2 receptor on the blood vessels, right? Do remember that the B2 receptor is one that is always present on the surface of the cells. This is present always on the surface of these cells. And this is the one which is responsible for the immediate and acute effects of the bradykinin. So things that happen within seconds to minutes by the help of the B2 receptor. So our focus is mainly on the B2 today, right? Because that is the one that causes the classic signs of the inflammation. That is the redness, the heat, the swelling, and the pain. Okay. So now let's continue up there with this B2 receptor. Okay. This is also to be considered as the G protein coupled receptor. G protein coupled receptor. Let me explain what does that mean. Do remember that a G protein coupled receptor is a protein that sits on the cell membrane, the outer wall of the cell, right? When the bradykinin binds to it from the outside, it triggers the cascade of the events on the inside of the cell. So it is just like that whenever something happens out from the outside, the process begins out inside, right? And this is possible because of this G protein coupled receptor, and this G protein inside the cell, right, starts releasing or starts initiating the chain reaction, which is known to be as the cascade reaction, right? So the bradykinin binds to the B2 receptor, and this activates the G protein inside the cell. That G protein then activates another enzyme. This G protein also activates another enzyme known to be as the phospholipase C. Phospholipase C. Okay. The shortest form for this one is also PLC. Okay. And so, what is this phospholipase C? This is also another enzyme, right? That cuts the specific fat molecules in the cell membrane. And what is that cell membrane which it cuts it down, right? What is that specific molecule in the cell membrane which is being cut by the phospholipase C? That is PIP2. PIP2, right? And this PIP2 further gets breakdown into IP3 and DAG. IP3 and DAG. I will tell you what is IP3 and DAG. This IP3 is actually stands for inositol triphosphate. Inositol triphosphate. And what is the main job of this one? Is actually to travel to the endoplasmic reticulum, and endoplasmic reticulum, as everybody knows, that this is the part of our body, right, where we do store the calcium, right? And what happens out there, once it's been cleaved down into the IP3, which is the inositol triphosphate, it reaches to the endoplasmic reticulum, okay, opens up one of the channel over there and start releasing what? The calcium, of course, right? Because that calcium is being stored into the endoplasmic reticulum, and after the calcium is being after the calcium is being released, it goes up to the main fluid of the cell. The calcium goes to the main fluid of the cell. Okay, then what does it produce? It also produces the DAG, right? It also produces the DAG. So what is this DAG stands for? This is diacylglycerol. Diacylglycerol. This is DHE, right? And what is the main job for this one? The main job is to stain the membrane and activate another enzyme, which is protein kinase C, PKC, right? And definitely this protein kinase C does also have some other functions too, but today we are going to focus upon the calcium pathway, right? So now we have to understand that how does all this, the bradykinin, start causing the vasodilation, okay? So the first one that you have to understand, what is a vasodilation? That is simply means or the widening of the blood vessels, right? So I've just seen that the bradykinin causes the rise in the calcium inside the endothelial cells, right? You understand how does the rise in the calcium begins out. We have just learned about that. And so endothelial cells to be considered as the flat cells that line inside the area of the blood vessel, right? And so when the calcium levels go up inside to these endothelial cells, this increase the calcium activates an enzyme which is known to be as, now you see that until previous we do got the ER to be activated, right? And this ER releasing the calcium. The calcium is now more and more inside the cells, right? And what's happening after we do have the surge of the calcium inside to the endothelial cells? They activate another enzyme known to be as endothelial nitric oxide synthase, right? And for the shorter one in the book, sometimes you might see it like this one, right? So endothelial cells, right? All of these ones, they are being present into this one, right? And so do remember it out that this endothelial nitric oxide synthase, which is being activated by the surge of the calcium, right? And so what is going to happen out after that one, this nitric oxide specifically takes an amino acid. It starts taking one of the amino acids, and start converting that, okay? So this amino acid is somewhat L-arginine, right? And after this endothelial nitric oxide synthase activates this or starts taking up this amino acid, right, the L-arginine, and converts that into nitric oxide ultimately, right? The nitric oxide ultimately. Now you see that the nitric oxide, one of the very special molecule, because it is a gas, right? And gases can in the body can diffuse very easily, right? They can spread out very easily through the cell membrane. So this nitric oxide made inside the endothelial cell quickly diffuse outward to the neighboring cells. Okay, let's say that we do have the endothelial cells to be like that, and the formation of the nitric oxide being happen out. So you see that because gases can diffuse very quickly right into the body. So what is going to happen out that the gases can spread out to the other endothelial cells as well, right? To the neighboring cells, right, which are the smooth cells surrounding the blood vessels. So the smooth muscle cells, very briefly to get to know as a reminder that they are the muscle cells in the wall of the blood vessel. Whenever they contract, whenever the smooth muscles they contract, the vessel gets narrow, and when they relax, the vessel gets widens. Okay, so you see that. Now imagine the scenario that when the nitric oxide is entering the smooth muscle cells and activating another enzyme, this nitric oxide is entered into the smooth muscle cells and starts activating another enzyme over here known to be as guanylate cyclase. Guanylate spellings. Guanylate cyclase. Okay. And once the guanylate cyclase is being activated, right, this converts one of the molecule called GTP, right? This starts converting the GTP into GMP, and you can just see that this GMP is now being produced and letting the smooth muscles to relax. Now the smooth muscles starts getting relaxed. So when the smooth muscles start getting, now see that the smooth muscles, when the smooth muscles by the help of this GMP starts getting relaxed, what has actually happens out, the blood vessel also get widens. Okay, and this widening of the blood vessel is actually known as vasodilation. This is how the bradykinin does the vasodilation, right? So when wider blood vessels mean more blood flows through them, right? Means more blood flows, bringing out the more heat to the surface of the skin, which is why we usually see the redness and the feel warmth at the site of the inflammation, right? And so summarizing all this one, you have to remember it out that the bradykinin rises the calcium in the endothelial cells, which produces the nitric oxide. The nitric oxide starts relaxing the smooth muscles, which widens the vessels, right, and leading to the redness and the warmth. I hope so that this point is clear to everybody.